North Korea remains the world's most secretive state. While the hardships of ordinary citizens are well documented, the brutal reality faced by prisoners is often overlooked. Their lives are beyond imagination, filled with horrific experiences. Join us as we reveal punishments that only exist in North Korea. Kwanliso, North Korea's secret political prison. Kwanliso, also known as absolute control zones, are the most notorious political prison camps in North Korea, designed to silence and punish those who dare to oppose the supreme leader, Kim Jong-un. These hellish facilities are estimated to hold over 120,000 inmates, who endure unimaginable conditions and brutal treatment. Reports from international human rights organizations and escapees paint a grim picture of life inside Kwanliso. Prisoners are subjected to severe torture, inhumane living conditions, and back-breaking labor. Many are forced to work in dangerous coal mines or perform strenuous tasks for up to 18 hours a day, with little to no food or medical care. The malnutrition and physical abuse are so severe that countless inmates die from starvation, disease, or injuries sustained during torture. The estimated death toll within Kwanliso is staggering, with reports suggesting that over 100,000 prisoners have perished over the years. Some were brutally executed for minor infractions or perceived disloyalty, while others succumbed to the relentless torture and harsh living conditions. Even those who manage to survive often spend the rest of their lives trapped in these nightmarish prisons, with no hope of release or redemption. Despite the overwhelming evidence from satellite imagery, escapee testimonies, and international investigations, the North Korean government adamantly denies the existence of Kwanliso. They go to great lengths to conceal these camps from the outside world, restricting access to the areas and threatening anyone who dares to speak out. In 2017, the tragic case of Otto Warmbier, an American student arrested in North Korea, brought global attention to the horrors of Kwanliso. Accused of being a spy, Otto was thrown into the brutal conditions of the prison camp. When he was finally released after 17 months and returned to the United States, he passed away just 6 days later. The severe mistreatment and torture he endured at Kwanliso are widely believed to have led to his untimely death. The international community has condemned these prison camps and called for their immediate closure, but the North Korean regime continues to operate them with impunity. 3-generation punishment policy. Imagine being born into a prison camp, doomed to a life of suffering and hardship because of a crime committed by your grandfather. In North Korea, this nightmare scenario is a grim reality for countless families, thanks to the country's barbaric 3-generation punishment policy. Under this twisted system, when an individual is convicted of a crime and sent to prison, their immediate family members, parents, children, and even grandchildren are also punished. Entire families are thrown into brutal labor camps, where they face starvation, torture, and back-breaking work for up to 20 hours a day. But the cruelty doesn't end there. Any child born inside these prison camps is condemned to a life of imprisonment, with no hope of ever leaving. These innocent children who have committed no crime are forced to grow up in a world of unimaginable suffering and deprivation. The 3-generation punishment policy was introduced by Kim Jong-il in 1972 as a way to crush any hint of dissent and ensure complete loyalty to the regime. By holding entire families responsible for the actions of one individual, the government creates a climate of fear and self-policing, where even the slightest misstep can have devastating consequences for generations to come. Life inside these prison camps is a living hell. Prisoners are forced to survive on meager rations of rotten food and contaminated water, leading to widespread malnutrition and disease. Many resort to catching and eating rodents and snakes just to stay alive. The grueling labor, combined with the lack of proper medical care, leads to countless deaths from exhaustion, illness, and injury. Public executions. In North Korea, the fear of death is a constant companion. and nowhere is this more apparent than in the country's horrifying public execution. These gruesome spectacles serve as a chilling reminder of the government's brutal grip on power and the dire consequences of defying the regime. Imagine being forced to watch as your friend, neighbor, or even a family member is put to death in front of a crowd of onlookers. This is the grim reality for many North Koreans, who are compelled to attend these executions as a form of psychological control and intimidation. The crimes punishable by public execution range from political dissent and attempting to escape the country to minor offenses like theft or watching foreign media. Even the slightest hint of disrespect towards the supreme leader, Kim Jong-un, can result in a death sentence carried out in full view of the public. These executions are typically carried out by firing squad or hanging, with the condemned individual often forced to stand on a raised platform or scaffold in front of a large crowd. In a twisted display of propaganda, the prisoner is usually made to wear a sign detailing their alleged crimes, even if they are innocent or have been coerced into confessing. Children and adults alike are forced to witness the brutal taking of life, creating a deep-seated trauma that can last a lifetime. The constant threat of execution serves to keep the population in line, too terrified to step out of line or question the government's authority. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of these public executions is the fact that they are often used as a tool for revenge or political maneuvering. High-ranking officials who fall out of favor with the regime can find themselves facing the firing squad, their deaths serving as a warning to others who might dare to challenge the status quo. Punishment for communication. In the oppressive world of North Korea, even the most basic forms of communication and access to information are heavily restricted and monitored by the government. The regime maintains an iron grip on its citizens' ability to connect with the outside world, seeing any uncontrolled exchange of ideas as a threat to its power. One of the most chilling examples of this control is the punishment meted out to those caught communicating with family members who have escaped the country. In October 2023, a 60-year-old woman from Pigam County was sentenced to 3 years in prison for the simple act of talking on the phone with her daughter, who had fled to South Korea in search of a better life. The woman who facilitated the call faced a year of forced labor, and her entire family was banished to the remote countryside as punishment for her crime. But the consequences for unauthorized communication don't stop there. North Koreans caught with unregistered electronic devices, including laptops, tablets, and even small radios, can face severe punishments, including being labeled as spies and facing execution. The mere possession of these devices is seen as a sign of disloyalty and a potential threat to the regime's control over information. The government's paranoia extends to all forms of foreign media, with citizens facing harsh penalties for consuming anything that originates outside of North Korea. From foreign books and magazines to movies and television shows, any exposure to outside ideas is seen as a dangerous influence that must be stamped out at all costs. Those caught with foreign media can face punishments ranging from imprisonment to execution, depending on the severity of the offense. North Koreans are forced to live in a state of constant fear and isolation, cut off from the rest of the world, and denied the basic human right to seek knowledge and connect with others. The lack of exposure to outside ideas and perspectives also makes it easier for the regime to maintain its grip on power and suppress any potential challenges to its authority. Despite the harsh punishments and risks involved, some brave North Koreans still find ways to circumvent the government's controls and access information from the outside world. Through smuggled USB drives, secret radio broadcasts, and other covert means, they risk everything to catch a glimpse of a world beyond their borders. Assassination of individuals outside North Korea. The North Korean regime's brutality knows no bounds, extending far beyond its own borders to silence dissent and eliminate perceived threats. One of the most chilling examples of this is the assassination of Kim Jong-nam, the half-brother of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, in Malaysia in 2017. Kim Jong-nam, who had been critical of his family's rule and had lived in exile for years, was attacked by two women at Kuala Lumpur International Airport. The women, who were later revealed to be Indonesian and Vietnamese nationals. The attack was carried out with VX nerve agent, one of the deadliest chemical weapons known to humanity. VX is a clear, odorless, and tasteless liquid that can cause death within minutes of exposure. It is so toxic that just 10 milligrams is enough to kill through skin contact. The use of this internationally banned substance, which is classified as a weapon of mass destruction by the UN, directly implicated the North Korean regime in the assassination. The fact that the attackers managed to smuggle VX into Malaysia and carry out the attack in a crowded international airport in broad daylight demonstrated the audacity and resources of the North Korean regime. The use of foreign nationals as assassins also allowed the regime to maintain plausible deniability. The brazen nature of the attack, carried out in broad daylight in a crowded international airport, sent shockwaves around the world. It demonstrated the lengths to which the North Korean regime was willing to go to eliminate those it perceived as a threat, even on foreign soil. Execution by anti-aircraft gun. In a twisted display of power and brutality, the North Korean regime has taken the use of anti-aircraft guns to a new level of horror. These massive weapons, designed to shoot down enemy planes, have been repurposed as tools of execution for high-profile individuals who have fallen out of favor with the government. One of the most shocking cases occurred in 2015 when General Hyun Yong-chol, the country's former defense minister, was reportedly executed by an anti-aircraft gun after being accused of disrespect and treason. The method of execution was so brutal that it left the condemned individual's body utterly destroyed, with no recognizable remains left behind. The use of anti-aircraft guns for executions is not limited to military officials. In 2016, two high-ranking ministers, Ri Yong-jin and Hwang Min, were also put to death using this method. Ri Yong-jin, the education minister, was caught nodding off during a meeting attended by Kim Jong-un, while Hwang Min, the agriculture minister, proposed policies that were seen as a direct challenge to Kim's authority. The knowledge that even the slightest perceived offense or disloyalty can result in such a horrific death serves as a powerful deterrent to anyone considering defiance or dissent. The use of anti-aircraft guns for executions is not just a matter of brutal efficiency. It also serves as a chilling symbol of the regime's complete control over the life and death of its citizens. The fact that a weapon designed for military use can be turned against individuals in such a public and gruesome manner reinforces the government's message that no one is safe from its reach. Kpop Punishment. In recent years, the growing popularity of South Korean pop culture, particularly K-pop, has posed a significant challenge to the North Korean regime's efforts to maintain a tight grip on its citizens' cultural consumption. In response, the government has declared a cultural war against South Korean influence, with severe punishments for those caught distributing or watching K-pop. The spread of K-pop in North Korea has been fueled by the increasing availability of smuggled USB drives and other media containing South Korean music, dramas, and movies. Many young North Koreans have become enamored with the bright, colorful world of K-pop, which stands in stark contrast to the drab, monotonous cultural offerings of their own country. However, the North Korean government sees this fascination with South Korean culture as a serious threat to its ideology and power. In 2020, Kim Jong-un declared K-pop a vicious cancer and introduced strict new laws to combat its influence. Under these laws, anyone caught distributing or consuming South Korean entertainment can face up to 15 years in a labor camp, with some even facing execution for their alleged crimes. The punishments for engaging with K-pop are not limited to individuals. Entire families can be sent to prison camps under the regime's guilt by association policy. This creates a climate of fear and self-censorship, where citizens are afraid to express their cultural preferences for fear of putting their loved ones at risk. In 2022, a 22-year-old man was publicly executed for listening to 70 South Korean songs, watching 3 films, and distributing the media, falling foul of a North Korean law adopted in 2020 that bans reactionary ideology and culture. The regime's crackdown on K-pop is not just about preserving its ideological purity, it is also a response to the growing economic and cultural influence of South Korea. The success of the South Korean entertainment industry has highlighted the stark contrasts between the two countries and has the potential to inspire North Koreans to question their own government's policies. Prisoners being eaten by dogs. In a shocking revelation that defies belief, reports have emerged from North Korea of prisoners being executed and their bodies fed to ravenous dogs. This barbarity is not limited to average citizens. Even high-ranking officials and members of the ruling family have fallen victim to this unimaginable fate. One of the most notorious examples of this brutality involved Kim Jong-un's own uncle, Jang Song-taek. In 2013, after a swift show trial, Jang was executed by firing squad for alleged crimes against the state. But the horror didn't end there. According to multiple sources, his body was then stripped naked and thrown into a cage filled with starving dogs, where it was torn apart and devoured. But Jang Song-taek is not the only victim of this unspeakable cruelty. In 2019, reports surfaced of 4 officials from North Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs being executed after talks between Kim Jong-un and then U.S. President Donald Trump failed to result in a deal. These officials were accused of selling information to the United States, a claim they vehemently denied. Nevertheless, they were put to death, and their bodies were allegedly fed to hungry dogs as a gruesome form of punishment. The use of dogs to dispose of executed prisoners' remains is a disturbing tactic employed by the North Korean regime to instill terror in the population and ensure absolute obedience. The knowledge that even the most powerful individuals in the country can meet such a grisly end serves as a chilling deterrent to anyone considering defiance or disloyalty. Human experiments. In a chilling revelation that has shocked the international community, reports have emerged of the North Korean regime conducting horrific human experiments on prisoners in its notorious labor camps. These experiments, which involve the testing of nerve agents, gases, chemicals, and poisons on human subjects, represent a sickening violation of human rights and international law. According to defectors and survivors who have managed to escape the clutches of these camps, prisoners are subjected to unimaginable horrors in the name of scientific research. Some have reported being exposed to high radiation levels, while others have been deliberately infected with deadly pathogens and diseases to test the effectiveness of biological weapons. One of the most disturbing accounts comes from a former prisoner who witnessed a family of 2 parents and 2 children being placed in a glass chamber. The chamber was then filled with poisonous gas, and the family was left to suffer an agonizing death while scientists observed and took notes. Other prisoners have reported being subjected to gruesome surgeries and medical procedures without anesthesia, including the removal of organs and limbs. These experiments are often conducted under the guise of testing new drugs or surgical techniques, but the true purpose is to further the regime's military and scientific capabilities at the expense of human lives. The use of prisoners as human guinea pigs is not only a gross violation of international law, but also a chilling reminder of the complete disregard for human life that characterizes the North Korean regime. These experiments are reminiscent of the atrocities committed by Nazi doctors during World War II, and the fact that they are still occurring in the 21st century is a stain on the conscience of humanity. Forced labor camps. In the dark underbelly of North Korea's oppressive regime, a network of forced labor camps serves as a chilling tool of control and punishment. Inmates in these camps, many of whom are political prisoners or individuals deemed disloyal to the regime, are subjected to grueling forced labor for up to 20 hours a day. They toil in harsh conditions, often in mines, forests, and factories, with little to no rest or proper nourishment. The conditions in these camps are nothing short of horrific. Prisoners are fed starvation rations, often consisting of just a few hundred grams of corn gruel per day, leading to widespread malnutrition and disease. Many are forced to scavenge for insects, rodents, and even grass to supplement their meager diets. The physical toll of the backbreaking labor and the lack of proper medical care lead to countless deaths from exhaustion, injury, and illness. Those who survive are often left with permanent physical and psychological scars. However, the horror of the forced labor camps extends beyond the physical suffering of the prisoners. The camps also serve as a powerful tool of control over the entire population, with the constant threat of being sent to one hanging over the heads of all North Koreans. The knowledge that even the slightest misstep or perceived disloyalty can result in a one-way ticket to these hellish facilities keeps the population in a state of constant fear and obedience. Despite the overwhelming evidence of the existence and horrific conditions of these camps, the North Korean government continues to deny their existence, claiming that they are nothing more than labor training centers. But the harrowing accounts of survivors and the satellite imagery of the vast camp networks tell a different story. Starvation as punishment. In the hellish world of North Korean prisons, starvation is not just a byproduct of the harsh conditions, but a deliberate tool of punishment and control. Prisoners are routinely subjected to extreme food deprivation, with many receiving just a few hundred grams of poor-quality food per day, barely enough to sustain life. The effects of this chronic malnutrition are devastating. Prisoners become emaciated, their bodies wasting away to mere skeletons. Many develop severe digestive problems as their stomachs struggle to process the meager rations. Diseases like pellagra, a vitamin deficiency that causes diarrhea, dementia, and skin lesions, run rampant in the camps. The cruelty of the starvation tactics goes beyond the prisoners' physical suffering. The guards use food as a weapon, rewarding those who comply with slightly larger portions and punishing those who resist with even less. This creates a perverse system of control, where prisoners are forced to compete against each other for scraps and to inform their fellow inmates in exchange for a few extra mouthfuls of food. The psychological impact of this constant hunger is just as devastating as the physical effects. Prisoners become obsessed with food, their every waking moment consumed by thoughts of where their next meal will come from. Some resort to eating grass, insects, and even soil to stave off the gnawing pain in their stomachs. Punishment for Western clothing. In North Korea, even the clothes on one's back can be a source of punishment and persecution. The regime considers Western clothing, particularly blue jeans, to be a symbol of capitalist decadence and American imperialism, making it illegal for citizens to wear them. The ban on Western clothing is just one aspect of the government's efforts to control every facet of citizens' lives and to maintain a strict socialist society. The regime fears that exposure to foreign fashion and culture could lead to a weakening of its ideological grip on the population and potentially inspire dissent. Citizens caught wearing blue jeans or other Western-style clothing can face severe consequences, including fines, imprisonment, and even forced labor. The punishments are particularly harsh for those who are found to be distributing or selling these items, with some facing execution for their alleged crimes. The irony of the situation is that many of the Western clothes that are so feared by the regime are actually manufactured in North Korea itself. The country has a thriving textile industry producing clothing for export, including brands that are popular in the United States and Europe. However, these same clothes are strictly forbidden for North Koreans to wear themselves. The ban on Western clothing is not just about politics, it is also a tool of social control. By enforcing a strict dress code, the regime seeks to create a sense of uniformity and conformity among the population. Citizens are expected to wear traditional Korean clothing or simple utilitarian garments that do not draw attention to themselves. North Koreans are denied the basic right to express themselves through their clothing and are forced to conform to the regime's narrow definition of acceptable attire. Punishment for smiling on July 8th. In North Korea, even the most basic human expressions can lead to severe consequences, and nowhere is this more apparent than on July 8th, the day of mourning for the country's founder, Kim Il-sung. On this somber occasion, the entire nation is expected to grieve collectively, and any form of celebration or joy is strictly prohibited. Kim Il-sung, the grandfather of current leader Kim Jong-un, ruled North Korea from its establishment in 1948 until his death in 1994. He is revered as a godlike figure, and his legacy forms the foundation of the country's political ideology, known as Chuche. The anniversary of his death is a major event in the North Korean calendar, marked by elaborate ceremonies and public displays of mourning. But the consequences for not adhering to the strict rules surrounding this day are severe. Anyone caught smiling, laughing, or engaging in any form of lighthearted behavior on July 8th can face harsh punishments, including imprisonment and even execution in extreme cases. The level of control exerted by the state on this day is staggering. Citizens are expected to visit statues and portraits of Kim Il-sung to pay their respects, and failure to do so can result in questioning by the authorities. The streets are eerily quiet, with no music, entertainment, or public gatherings allowed. Even the act of cooking or eating celebratory meals is forbidden. The psychological impact of this enforced mourning is profound. North Koreans are not only denied the right to express their true emotions, but are also forced to perform grief and sadness, even if they do not genuinely feel it. The constant fear of being caught and punished for the slightest hint of happiness creates a suffocating atmosphere of fear and paranoia. By controlling every aspect of citizens' lives, even their facial expressions, the government seeks to crush any semblance of individuality or dissent. Freedom of movement. In North Korea, the concept of freedom of movement is virtually non-existent. The government maintains a tight grip on its citizens' ability to travel both within the country and abroad, effectively trapping them within its borders. This movement restriction is a key tool in the regime's efforts to maintain control over the population and prevent exposure to outside ideas and influences. By keeping its citizens isolated and dependent on the state, the government can more easily manipulate and suppress any potential dissent. Within North Korea, citizens are required to obtain official permission to travel outside their designated areas, which are determined by their work and residence. This system, known as the Songbun classification, determines one's social status and privileges based on factors such as family background and loyalty to the regime. Those with lower Songbun rankings face even greater restrictions on their movement and are often denied access to certain areas of the country. Attempting to travel without proper authorization can result in severe punishments, including imprisonment and forced labor. Citizens who are caught trying to leave the country altogether face even harsher consequences, with some being executed for their alleged crimes. Travel restrictions also extend to foreign travel. Only a select few North Koreans, typically those with high Songbun rankings and connections to the regime, are allowed to travel abroad. Even then, they are subject to strict monitoring and control by the government, with their families often held as hostages to ensure their return. North Koreans are denied the basic human right to explore and experience the world beyond their borders and are forced to live in a state of constant fear and isolation. The lack of exposure to outside ideas and cultures also makes it easier for the regime to maintain its grip on power and suppress any potential challenges to its authority. Despite the harsh punishments and risks involved, some North Koreans still attempt to flee the country in search of a better life. Those who are lucky enough to escape often face significant challenges adjusting to life outside of North Korea, including cultural and linguistic barriers, discrimination, and the trauma of their experiences. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.